Hello everyone. In today's video I'll be showing you this pretty half decent PC I've built recently, but I built it on the somewhat cheap. And in the perspective of the current price increase and stock issues of the latest and greatest hardware, some people are going to be stuck with some of the parts from yesteryear. And what I hope to do for everyone today is give a rough idea of what you can expect to find for roughly £130 or less on eBay, which isn't too bad for an entry-level gaming PC in my opinion. So, onto the specs. Sorry about the dodgy camera work, I tried something new and I'm not too sure about it myself. To start off, we have the motherboard. It's a Gigabyte GA-H81M DSV2 micro ATX motherboard on the H81 chipset with the LGA 1150 socket from Intel. I scored this board on eBay for about £45, but you might be able to find a cheaper one. And I'm gonna show you the mistake I made when I first started ordering parts for this build. So I only noticed this once the item had already been shipped out to me, but there is no 24-pin connector on this motherboard. Why this matters is because a standard ATX power supply don't have the 16-pin connector which will power the motherboard, and the correct PSU are OEM manufactured and usually don't have any PCIe connected like power connectors for the discrete GPU, so I would have to be stuck to a graphics card that's powered off the PCIe slot again. So if you're going to buy a motherboard off eBay, make sure it has a 24-pin connector as well as an 8-pin CPU power connector. And if it's an OEM motherboard, I would just advise against it. After that disclaimer, the accompanying processor is the Intel Xeon E3 1220V3, a quad-core 8-threaded CPU with a clock of 3.1 GHz and no boost clock. Why no boost clock, you ask? Well, this is a Xeon processor. It's made to run for a continuous amount of time in a server and not for peak performance during gaming, so on a normal use the boost clock won't matter too much, but I'm going to test it today with gaming. This was only £23 on eBay, and this lovely Actic cooler which was like £12 on Amazon. Also, I should add, do some very extensive research on the parts you're going to buy, because a lot of hardware have similar names and are pretty easy to get mixed up with each other, with say the V1, V2, V3 on Xeon processors and the 4770 or with the 7770, and some even have a K or a L I think, and it's really easy to buy incompatible parts, especially when you're dealing with Intel, so be careful. I'm going to be putting 2 sticks of 8GB DDR3 RAM at 1600 MHz in this build. This CPU does support up to 32GB, but this will be fine for what we're going to do. And you would also be fine with 8GB of RAM from 2 4GB sticks, as it's much cheaper to find these on eBay, and most games don't require more than 8GB personally. I was going to be pairing this all with a GTX 460 superclocked, which I won on eBay for again £20, but I was having issues with the drivers, so I just pulled out my old 660 Ti, as it's reliable and is the most comparable GPU I own. So this graphics card has a whole 2GB of GDDR5 memory, a whole 2GB, with a core clock of 915 MHz, boosting to 980 MHz at its peak, and this will set you back anywhere from about £30 to £50. That's what I could find on eBay. This card though done me well for years before I could afford to upgrade my PC last year, so I know it should at least be able to be usable today, even if you have to lower the settings to low or near low. Also, I did have this old PSU laying around, and I was skeptical about using it at first, as it does look dodgy as hell, but I was going to go ahead and use it, but then I realised that it didn't actually have a PCIe power connector, so I remembered about my sister's old PC, so I went and stole the PSU from that, which is a Corsair CX600, a 600 watt power supply with 2 PCIe plugs and the almighty 24 pin plug for the board, and there's also a 6 pin plug for the CPU. I've got a cheap and cheerful 480 Gigabyte SSD from Amazon, nothing special and not amazingly quick, but it does the job. Last up is the case, and I like it, to be honest. It's simple yet effective, with dual controllable fans both on the top and front of the case to ensure maximum airflow throughout the case and keep your components cool. This case has quite a lot of room actually for a micro ATX case, and also has some nice room for cable management, which I didn't really take advantage of because there's no windows on the case, so who cares. Also, I will add, if you're buying a second hand case, you will probably need to get some motherboard standoff screws from eBay or Amazon. Also, I got some Arctic MX4 for the thermal paste and some isopropyl alcohol to help with cleaning. Now I got to work building the PC. First up was the motherboard, then the CPU, and then goes the cooler. And I removed the paste that came on the cooler and put my own on. You don't usually have to do this, but you will get better thermals if you do. And don't forget to plug the fan in. In goes the RAM. I would also suggest putting the I/O shield in now to save having to take the motherboard out again to fit it in. Now the motherboard is done onto seating it. Sorry if the quality is kind of bad here. I didn't focus the camera well and I didn't really give it the best angle either, but it's kind of the best I've got to work with. First, line the motherboard up and see which standoff feet you are missing, and then add them to the case. Then line up the motherboard with the standoff pegs and screw the motherboard in, but don't tighten the screws up all the way until you've got all of the screws loosely in to the pegs. Then go over them all and tighten them up. Now the PSU goes in. Make sure the fan is blowing out of the vent in the case at the bottom, if you have one. And then just hang the wires over the side of the case for now to keep them out of the way. And then just connect the cables up to the motherboard. It's hard to mess this up. Each pin is labelled so you know what goes where and what does what. Next is installing the SSD in the nice handy bay here. Attach the SATA and power cables to it. I, however, forgot to attach the power cable to the drive. Whoops. Then goes in the graphics card. What you can see here is the GTX 460, but now the machine has a GTX 660 Ti inside, which is a bit better. But remember, I was having driver issues with the GTX 460, so I couldn't go ahead with using it. Now to finish off, we need to plug in the last few cables for the case, so the buttons and the fans, and then we're done. Also, this motherboard doesn't have a port for my extra USB 3.0, which is sad, but oh well. Now tie off the cables because I'm too lazy to tidy them, slam on the sides, and we're golden. Now I'm going to install some games and I'll get you some benchmarks. And another disclaimer, my capture card sucks, but this is the clearest way I can get footage for you, and they're only benchmarks, so they don't really need to look beautiful. You've got the FPS in the corner. I can't really lie about that. I don't know why I would. But first up, we have Half-Life 2. On max settings, this game will be maxed out 99.9% of the time. On the FPS, whether or not you're in gunfights, in Ravenholm fighting zombies, it's safe to say Half-Life 2 and the older generation of games will be more than capable of running on here well over 100 FPS as a minimum. I was going to try COD 4, but it wouldn't load for some reason, so next up is the Halo Master Chef Collection. And this game, on the enhanced graphics, is running at a locked 60 FPS, which you can't argue with really. This is perfect on this system. Doom 2016 wouldn't run this time, but earlier I had it running on medium settings using the Vulkan backend at about 80% resolution scale, and it was giving back about 60 to 70 FPS, which was more than playable for Doom 2016, but unfortunately I couldn't get it working again. I did a bit of research, but there was no luck. Next up though, GTA 5, and after its immensely long loading time, I was in the game and it was running great. Flying downtown, the game managed to keep above 60 FPS the whole time, and even when explosions were going off, the game only dipped down to about 58 FPS, which wasn't really noticeable if I didn't have the counter on in the corner, and I was quite impressed by this. Next up, CSGO. This game used to be able to run on a toaster, but with the recent graphical updates to the game, it's managed to become somewhat harder to run. So, with these settings and net_graph1 enabled in the console, I hopped in game and was surprised actually to see the game running over 100 FPS, which is perfect for a 60 or 70 Hz monitor, and it's definitely a competitive frame rate even though my CSGO skill could portray otherwise. Now is Fortnite. It's a bit of a weird one here. The game runs about 130 FPS plus on the medium preset, but the CPU seems to be pegged at 100%, and it makes the game stutter every now and then. I tried dropping the resolution down to 720p, but it didn't fix it. But I'm sure if you tweak the settings enough, you'll be able to find a way to make it work, and then I died. Last up is Minecraft Java Edition. This is the easier of the two to run, and it shows that by getting multiple hundreds of FPS, and even manages to hold up against 20 chunks at one point. So if you want to play Minecraft on a PC, here you go. It's cheap, it's cheerful, it's fucking Minecraft. So, in conclusion, this PC does an excellent job for its cost, coming to around £130, going by eBay prices. And if you can't really get much else at the moment, this is a really good way to get into the PC gaming scene. With some older games like GTA, Minecraft, or even Fortnite, this is a good way to get into using a keyboard and mouse as well, if you don't want to become dedicated straight away and just drop yourself straight in there with a £2,000 rig. Only to realise you don't like a keyboard and mouse. Shit, just build a computer like this, then you can play some games, you realise you don't like it, it could be your family computer after that, bada boom. Or even if you want a good PC for some light editing and some Photoshop work, and maybe some games on the side, then this is perfect for you. I'll leave links to all of the parts you can readily buy at the time of this uploading at least, and the games I've tested can all be found on either Steam or Epic Games. So post in the comments if you have a similar rig to this, or you've built something similar to this and you can get your games to run better. Let me know, because you never know, you could be helping someone else out with your comment. So thanks for watching everyone. I'll be making a separate emulation video on this PC soon, as there's quite a bit I want to test. But until then, I hope you have a good day. See ya.